Meet Hotshot Holcomb, going about his routine business as super sleuth and rough, tough private eye. Sudden assault and mayhem are just routine for Hotshot. Hotshot figures he's had enough excitement for one day. Little does he know. And so another fantasy in the great American legend of the private detective begins. The private eye, folklore hero of millions of pulp and radio fans. But as usual, the myth is far more gaudy than the reality of everyday life. On any corner of any modern city, a private detective who looks nothing like Sherlock Holmes or Sam Spade may be at work, unspectacular and unnoticed by his fellow citizens. Fellow citizens like this one, for instance. The citizen doesn't know it, but something has happened to him. He has acquired a tail, which means that he's being followed, his every movement kept under constant surveillance. Wherever he goes, whatever he does, he will be followed, watched, shadowed. In police parlance, this is known as a close tail, which means that the detective follows his quarry all day, and day after day, wherever the trail may lead, whether 10 blocks away or across the country. The quarry may be under suspicion of embezzlement. His employers want to know what he's up to, what he does in his off hours, what company he keeps, where and how he spends his money. No police department can handle all such cases. The suspect comes under the scrutiny of the private detective. When the detective seems least busy, he may be working hardest. Keeping his subject constantly in sight calls for ingenuity and persistence. The trail may take unexpected twists and turns, and the quarry may scuttle suddenly into a hideaway where the private detective cannot follow. But when pursuit becomes impossible, vigil begins. No heroics here, no gunplay, no blondes. Just a patient, unromantic watch, which may extend until dawn. But when it's over, the facts will be in, and the truth will be known. Supplementing, but not replacing, the functions of the police, the private detective today is active in every sphere of community life where the temptation to crime exists. More than $30 million worth of goods is stolen every year from department stores, and shoplifters pose a continuing crime problem. Expert lady detectives posing as shoppers are trained to spot store thieves among the streams of honest customers and keep them under surveillance. The professional shoplifter works with magician-like dexterity, using sleight-of-hand motions and tricks which the unskilled eye cannot detect. But the trained detective knows them all and is alerted by the first sign that the shopper is lifting, not buying. Once the lifter has carried her stolen property out into the street, she becomes liable to arrest and prosecution. And the evidence? It's not immediately visible, but the detective knows where it is, an old shoplifting dodge. The private detective operates on all levels of modern society, including the upper crust. He doesn't wear false whiskers and hawkshaw disguises, but he sometimes dresses the part. As unlisted guest at many society functions, he guards against jewel thieves and larcenous gate crashers. At the other extreme, the private detective's assignment may call for duty in factory areas where repeated burglaries have been committed. On jobs like this, the private detective carries a gun. He knows how to use one, but seldom does. Reputable detective agencies do their work with a minimum of gunplay and dramatics. For running a detective agency is a solid, sober business undertaking, directed at Pinkerton's, for instance, by the great-grandson of the founder. Guiding the activities of more than 1,000 operatives in cities throughout America and Canada requires a strategy board of crime specialists capable of carrying on the tradition of America's oldest and most famous private detective agency. A tradition which goes back 100 years to Allen Pinkerton, who founded the agency and organized the Secret Service for President Lincoln. All the legendary figures of American crime parade through the Pinkerton files. Figures like the Dalton Boys and Butch Cassidy's notorious Wild Bunch, forerunners of the modern gangster. The fabled Jesse James himself was pursued to his death by the Pinkertons. And the old-time trademark of the Pinkertons, with its slogan, "We never sleep," originated the nickname Private Eye, which is passed into the language. The Pinkerton Rogues Gallery was America's first and is still one of the best. Police departments often consult it, and Pinkerton men study it constantly, storing away thousands of faces in their memories. For every picture, a corresponding card gives the characteristics, habits, and techniques of the criminal. This information enables Pinkerton operatives to recognize thousands of crooks on sight. Pinkerton men become walking catalogs of criminal lore. Operatives like these are the elite among private detectives. Relaxing between assignments, they hold themselves in readiness for the next, whatever it may be. It will not be divorce or labor spying. The Pinks do not handle such cases. But that still leaves plenty of room for variety and excitement when the call comes. The promise of variety and excitement draws newcomers into detective work, though they don't always know they're entering it. Deceptive want ads are run by the agency to recruit job seekers who are alert and intelligent, but not deluded by wild-eyed ideas about the detective business. Applicants are usually amazed when offered a career in sleuthing, often drop their previous line of work to accept. The applicant who does accept must undergo a thorough apprenticeship before he joins the long line of detectives that extends back a century to the first Pinkerton. In the modern world, he will have to learn to use modern techniques, such as secret telescopic photography, one of the prime weapons in the private detective's arsenal. In insurance cases where there is reason to suspect false disability claims, the movie camera is the surest way of obtaining the evidence. But it may be weeks or months later before the detectives get the pictures that clinch the case. Once the evidence is on film, it forms a record that cannot be denied or disputed in a court of laws. The detective's camera has caught the fake cripple off guard. Claim disallowed. Or it may be a blackmail suspect that the private detective is assigned to follow. Who are her associates? Whom is she fronting for? There are ways of finding out. The telegram blank that was under the one on which the suspect wrote is chemically treated to bring out the indentations left by the writing, and a Confederate's name is disclosed, a new lead uncovered. Late hours mean little to the private detective wrestling with a knotty case. He is trained to decipher secret writing and to use scientific techniques when the situation requires. In addition, the operative can call upon the resources of private and official laboratories for diagnosis and analysis in unraveling more complicated problems. The laboratory today is a major weapon in both the public and private war against crime. New techniques, new methods, new instruments are constantly being evolved to make the way of the transgressor harder than ever before. With the laboratory as an ally, the private detective can sometimes uncover and forestall industrial sabotage and arson before it gets underway. The crime is old, but sometimes the methods are new. Alerted in advance, the detectives can pounce before the damage is done. Another sphere where private policing has become standard is at the racetrack, where uniformed Pinkerton guards have long been fixtures. The head of this service, a former FBI agent, briefs the guards on handling the crowds and maintaining order during the day's racing. For the Pinkerton operative, it is the crowd, not the race, that must be watched. Pickpockets, touts, and degenerates are held in check by the omnipresent private eye. All this activity still lies ahead of the fledgling sleuth, who, in signing on as a private detective, dedicates himself to a stern and exacting profession. He'll need instruction and advice from veteran operatives, and he'll be required to bone up on the technicalities of law violation and law enforcement. Proper guidance will help him absorb the terminology of his chosen trade. Student detective will spend many hours studying photographs of lawbreakers. Special albums are prepared of criminals working in various fields, hotel racketeers, forgers, and so on. The albums are kept up to date with new entries regularly inserted, so that the detective is kept constantly abreast of underworld characters. So the freshman detective slowly and laboriously prepares himself until he is summoned into the chief's office by Robert Pinkerton, fourth of his line to head the agency. He receives his credentials as an authorized operative and becomes Agent 2009, licensed by the state to carry out his duties wherever he may be assigned.